Hello and welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Tonight we'll be looking at the island of Manhattan in New York City will stop prosecuting prostitution as part of a nationwide shift. A new study that shows that low-fat diets may actually be reducing men's testosterone levels. And one hitting a little close to home, a dear friend and Mormon sex therapist has been ousted from the Mormon church for critiques.
So, our first story.
Yes.
Manhattan has joined a couple of other cities in the country. I believe Philadelphia being one of those.
Cyrus Vance Jr.
Yes, indeed.
Taking a little time out from prosecuting 45.
Okay. So we look at what Cyrus Vance, the district attorney in Manhattan, has done is they just made a decision that they are going to be dismissing over 900 open cases involving prostitution and unlicensed massage, and they're also going to be throwing out over 5,000 cases of people that are charged with loitering for the purposes of prostitution, which is a charge that has often been referred to as walking while trans, because a lot of trans women that have just been hanging out or walking down the street have been picked up on that very charge.
Do you remember this a couple of years ago? I mean, it was like such a big to-do, and everyone was so excited that the New York City Public Health Department issued their own branded condoms that look like the subway. You know, everybody's familiar with those iconic New York subway symbols, the circle, the colored circles with the letter or number, depending on which train. And healthcare workers were going around to areas were known for prostitutes to congregate, giving out free condoms, which of course everyone was happy about, only to have vice cops hiding and watching and showing up 5 minutes later, busting the sex workers using their possession of the condoms, which the health department just gave them for free, as evidence that they intended to engage in prostitution.
Exactly.
Of course, they were thrown out, and the judge yelled at the cops who arrested them. But
Right. So, again, when you look at one of the things that Cyrus Vance has said is that over the last decade, we've learned from those who, with lived experience and from our own experience on the ground, that criminally prosecuting prostitution does not make us safer and too often achieves the opposite result by further marginalizing vulnerable individuals.
New Yorkers, he called.
Well, he's talking about in New York, but I think this is something, again, it applies across the board.
But it's nice to have a district attorney refer to sex workers as their citizens.
As their citizens, exactly.
Right? As their neighbors, as fellow New Yorkers.
Right.
You don't hear that language very often.
Now, in spite of the fact that Manhattan has now joined the ranks of a few other cities, like I said Philadelphia, and I think Baltimore as well,
I'm sure
and not
Seattle.
Prosecuting prostitutes or sex workers for this, they are still going to be prosecuting people who pay for sex work. They are going to still prosecute pimps and people who traffic.
As they should.
Right? And basically, they're trying to kind of fight this, by arresting the customers instead of the workers, which is definitely a good start, but I think we can look at places, other places in the world, and find out that doesn't work either.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time now. A lot of places have taken to publishing the names of Johns busted in sting operations, for example.
Right.
But it's always, 9 times out of 10, it's always the sex worker who is charged for the crime of the trafficker, the panderer, kind of an old legal term for pimping, right? Where those are the ones, if there are crimes being committed, they're likely the ones committing the crime, not the independent. And, this other infamous pair of laws from the Trump administration, the FOSTA and FOSTA, always under the guise of protecting the children.
Oh, I was always about the children.
Basically eliminated a lot of sex workers' ability to advertise their services, like the famous Backpage and other
right,
online.
or shutting down Craigslist
Right.
and a lot of those other online, even the Village Voice.
And the same thinking, those kinds of moves will worsen problems by making sex workers more vulnerable,
Right.
less able to screen potential clients.
Right. And drive it more underground.
Right.
So again, way to go, New York. This is a great first step. We still have more to go. But again, congratulations for no longer beating up on sex workers.
Right. And again, kudos to Cyrus Vance Jr. Your father was a giant man, and good to see you carrying on the tradition.
Indeed.
So next,
Right.
a little scary study.
Well, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a scary study. It's actually something that not this directly, but kind of related to things that we've talked about for a long time. When we talk about diet, when we talk about these necessary hormones, people love talking about testosterone. People love talking about estrogen.
Especially sex therapists.
Yeah, but very few people really do know what they're talking about. Right? One thing, and we've talked about that before here as well on the show, that the basis, right, the raw materials that our bodies need to make such chemicals like testosterone and estrogen is cholesterol. Right? We need fat. Right? And how many times have we been saying, just in terms of basic dietary stuff, fat don't make you fat, sugar makes you fat. So this push that we've had in this country for the last 30 years,
More.
fat-free, get rid of fat, fat is terrible, no cholesterol, and it becomes this big marketing point, and it turns out that's not the way to go. Right? That's not right, because it's been shown that men who do consume low-fat diets also have a significant decrease in their testosterone level.
Well, 5 to 10%, I guess, is significant, depending on. No, I'm sorry.
More even.
10 to
15%.
That is certainly significant.
Right. Almost 30% if you're a vegan.
Right.
And that vegan or vegetarian low-fat diet. Right. And again, they found, and this was a meta-analysis. I was looking at all the studies that were published on that, and one very, very common procedure that they have done is they started men with a high-fat diet, right, which was 40% fat, and then they reduced that to a 20% fat in their diet.
And testosterone levels.
Plummeted.
Note, keep an eye out for that STER in the root of the word, like sterone, testosterone. Right? So most hormones that keep us functioning, keep us alive, are originally produced from cholesterol.
Right.
Cholesterol.
Right.
Right? The hormones that keep our kidneys functioning and producing urine.
And all of the sexual and reproductive hormones.
Right.
Estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, these are all cholesterol derived.
So thinking of it that way, it makes sense, right? And we've, it's long been fodder for comedians to make fun of vegans and vegetarians, but it has been known that their diet is often lacking in protein and fat.
Right.
And this is the kind of study that confirms it.
And it also sort of makes sense of something that, again, people have made fun of for many years. That when you look at a lot of people who have been vegan and vegetarian for a very long time, there's been an irony that a lot of people have pointed out, that these people that eat supposedly so healthy seem to always look so unhealthy, right? Especially with lack of muscle tone, guys with that pear-shaped body. And we now kind of can see that a lot of that is probably hypogonadism, a low testosterone. They are really not producing enough, which means they're also going to have high estrogen.
We often talk about this metabolic syndrome, especially when sex therapists are working with medical providers. When you see a guy who's, around our age, right? Late 50s, around 60, smoking, drinking beer, like that urologist, John Stripling, we used to work with. He said he can pick guys out in the bleachers,
That's right. Go to a ball
game.
See
the guy with the big belly and the man spread and the heaping plate of nachos in front of him and a giant beer over here and a cigarette over there. You can almost guarantee he's got erectile dysfunction because of all this perfect storm of cholesterol, likely prediabetes, high blood pressure, all of which affect erectile function.
Right.
But I think what this is saying is there is such a thing as too healthy, right?
But I would say that's not healthy.
Too low, right? I mean, people under the name, like how many people we know spend $300 a month at the Vitamin World so they can have very expensive urine.
Exactly.
And not much else.
Exactly.
But
that's where it's going, by the way.
Balance. Everything in what's that word? Moderation.
Oh, moderation. Yeah.
Right.
The only thing I don't do in moderation is moderation.
If only.
Yeah. So eat your fat.
Yeah.
Right? But again, smart. Don't go overboard with it. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a license to just go, go to town and just, swallow down a bucket of fried chicken. But, eat smart. You can't avoid it.
Right.
Can't avoid it. All right.
Our last piece is kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Watch this unfold because the woman at the heart of the story is a dear friend of ours and friend of the show, Natasha Helfer, who's was the founder.
I was going to say, the head and founder.
Powerful, amazing group of therapists in Utah and Kansas and Nevada called the Mormon Mental Health Association. And this is a group of therapists, many sex therapists, who identify as part of the Church of Latter-day Saints. Or recovering Mormons, working with folks who are members of the church or have left the church or in mixed marriages. And she has, we've known for a few weeks now that Natasha has been waiting for this
under fire,
being called to the carpet, as it were, to defend herself. And this past Sunday, that hearing was held in Salt Lake City, and Ms. Helfer was asked to. She was removed. What they used to call excommunication, but they don't call it anymore. Her membership was removed from the church. So this is just awful.
It really is. And you know what?
A woman who literally saves lives.
Absolutely.
Who literally prevents suicides. Who literally saves marriages by attempting to bring a healthy sexual view to this faith group.
And, let's not also forget a very important piece in all of this, too, that she was, with every ounce of her passion, with every ounce of her soul, she loved her faith. She loved this church. You will not find, I think, a better advocate of Mormonism or Latter-day Saintism or whatever the correct term for that would be than Natasha. But she was calling out what she saw were the inhumane and just sort of out-of-touch practices in terms of what's affecting people's lives, real people.
I mean, we've talked about this a lot over the years, the idea of orthodoxy of any stripe, of any religion, not always having such ideal values when it comes to sexuality. But as I said, what Natasha was doing was bringing attention to 100% normal, universal aspects of human sexuality that are problematic in the Mormon church. How do they put it? Church members are taught not to have sex before marriage, okay, old story, not to engage in passionate kissing, touch another person's private parts, or arouse, quote, emotions in your own body that are supposed to be reserved for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously masturbation is considered a sin, homosexuality is considered a sin, looking at sexually explicit erotic material is a sin, and you have a situation like in most faith groups where the majority of the flock are sinning.
Right.
And everybody pretends that they're not.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, an irony that these church leaders just, I guess, did not or would not or could not even wrap their minds around is that she also was helping these people not only live their lives more effectively and successfully, but also strengthen their ties with the church.
Right. Recover from their shame.
Yeah.
And become less guilty.
Indeed.
And feel like they're good.
Indeed. So, the thing that's most heartbreaking about this, for us at least, is the fact that we know how much she loved that church, how much she loved her faith. She had been a member of that, I think, since she was 5 years old. Yeah. So you want to talk about literally just kicking somebody out and just shattering their heart. Yeah. Right? And I don't know how that is a religious value.
I know, I certainly hope there is a change. That Natasha is planning on appealing this decision. It's been an unusual thing about the Mormon Church is that they don't have a seminary-trained clergy like we think of most.
It's like a lay clergy.
Right. So opinions can vary wildly, even more than if you had ordained priests or ministers or rabbis or imams.
Right.
So hopefully things will change. People will come to their senses, and hopefully we'll be able to have Natasha back on the show.
Yes.
To talk about this soon. We understand her wanting to lay low.
Absolutely, absolutely, and don't want to say too much bad because again, she is appealing, and we want to do nothing but support and give our love to you, Natasha. All right, so keep fighting the good fight. All right, and for our final piece, we do like to end with something that we call poetic justice.
Our little opportunity to call out hypocrisy wherever we see it. One of our favorite hobbies.
Indeed, indeed. And this week's honor goes out to Michelle Brownfield, a psychologist at Minnesota's Moose Lake Sex Offender Treatment Program. Right? I'm just going to let that sink in for a moment. Right? The Moose Lake Sex Offender Treatment Program. Michelle Brownfield was the psychologist overseeing the treatment in the Moose Lake Sex Offender Treatment Program, and has just been charged with 2 counts of third-degree sexual misconduct for having sex with her clients.
Imagine that.
Right? Not a bad gig, right? You go to a sex offender treatment program
And
because somebody didn't like the fact that you had sex, and you have sex with your therapist.
Wow.
Right? That's a hell of a treatment. I missed that in graduate school.
Yeah.
Right? I missed that class. So apparently she had a couple of victims, right? That it was just sort of found out through text messages and all kinds. Again, these people are not that bright. I mean, if you're doing something, and she knew that people were already suspicious. She knew people were already investigating her relationships with her clients, and she persisted. So that's just Oh, that's beautiful. That really is. That's just a whole nother level.
Truly poetic justice.
It really is. So for that beautiful example, Michelle Brownfield at the Moose Lake Sex Offender Treatment Program, we salute you as this week's Poetic Justice.
That'll do it for this week's Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. We'll see you next Sunday.